All right, it is Monday night, which means it's Monday Night Spark Live, and I have another special guest with me today to really talk about how to start running, even if you think you're not a runner. So I have a special guest today. Catrina Aniballi is going to help us kind of sift through all of the things you need to do to start running. And a lot of new people are starting to run with coronavirus going around, gyms being closed, sports being closed. And for some people, this is the only form of exercise that they can do. So I've had actually a lot of people reach out to me of late. So I wanted to put this together to help the beginner runner. So someone who doesn't consider themselves a runner and wants to know what are the things I need to do at this point in order to start running. So those of you that are jumping on here on the live, just type in live. And those of you who are watching the replay, just type in replay. Or if you're listening to this on the Healthy Runner podcast or on the Spark Your Training YouTube channel, thank you so much for watching. So Catrina, if you don't mind introducing yourself and tell us who you are.
Hello, everyone. I'm Katrina. I am a little past newbie runner, as I call myself. I started running around 5 years ago, and I'm currently continuing to run, but I also teach at our local YMCA, and I teach a treadmill class, and I teach a couch to 5K program, as well as I have a couple of friends who I have coached through different types of running, whether they just wanted to start running. But I've been there. If any beginner runner has a question, feel free to ask me. I guarantee I have had those questions and other questions. Any question you guys could have, I've been there when I first started running, and I'll get into my story later. But I definitely understand everything, the insecurities, the doubt. I've been there. That's what I'm hoping to do, to get people to just start moving. It doesn't have to be a full-on run. It can be a jog, walk, but just keep moving. Think of Dory. Just keep swimming. Just keep moving.
There you go. I love it. And this is why I wanted to bring Katrina on, guys. As you can see, she's very passionate about this topic. And this is something that has resonated with me. I've known Katrina probably for, I don't know, what would you say, maybe 6 months?
Probably.
5 months?
Yeah.
Something to that effect. And we've kind of worked together closely, as well as she was in our Spark half marathon training program and is now doing our fitness program. And the things that Katrina has shared with me over these last couple of months have been very inspirational. And I knew that I wanted to eventually bring her on the show because more people need to hear some of her kind of wisdom, her mindset, her experience. And I know it can help a lot of you new runners who are just starting out right now, and you might feel intimidated and you might feel that you're not a runner and you don't even know where to start, and you're a jogger or you're just a fast walker, right? So you might be thinking some of those things. And these tips that Katrina is going to share with you tonight, I think are really going to get you off to a healthy start in order to start running and be able to stick with it. So that is my goal. That is Katrina's goal, is we want to see more people embrace this sport and not think of it as a punishment. Like if you got punished when you were playing high school sports and they said, go do 5 laps, or you had to run the mile because it was a test you needed to do in gym class. And you were like, I can't believe I have to run a mile. Like it was a punishment, right? So there are so many runners like Katrina, like myself, who are adult onset runners and have taken up running. And now it's like our passion, right? So we see the joy that it brings us, that has brought other people. So we want to share some of these tips, some of our stories, some of our wisdom with you to be able to help guide you through these initial phases where it can be difficult at times. So Katrina, with that being said, what is your running story?
All right. It was this weird route. I hated running initially. I used to be a boxer, an amateur boxer, and running was part of our conditioning. and I hated it. I mean, no, like I hated running, but I did it. And then I ended boxing. And all of a sudden, I decided to just start running on my own. And I started to find I enjoyed it. I enjoyed aspects of it, being by myself, listening to my music, getting better at running. And slowly, and when I say slowly, think turtle in a molasses pit, slowly started getting my speed up. And I can honestly say I am now currently in distance up to marathon. But when I tell people I run a marathon, they're like, how can you run 26.2 miles? And I said, well, you don't start running 26.2 miles. You start maybe running a quarter mile, or you start maybe running 2 minutes, walking a minute. That is literally how I started. I was overweight. I lost weight and then started running, and that helped keep the weight off. But that should not be and was not really a goal of running. And I'll get into more of what your goal is. But you start slow. I mean, I literally started walking, running. To give an example, my first 5K, and I never talk about time, because I never want people to feel, oh, I can never do that, because it's your own individual time. But I will give you my time. My first 5K, I think, was like at 51 minutes. I mean, when you think about that, it was a walk, it was a slow, but I did it. I completed my first 5K, and then I progressed. So I want people to know, yes, I now run a marathon, but I didn't start out running 26.2. Nobody can do that unless maybe, I'm giving a shout out to Lou, but unless you don't just get out of bed and run a marathon. I mean, that's insane. So again, I want people to know it is possible, but we'll talk about goals. Races don't have to be a goal. Okay. I like to talk.
Nice.
And I love talking about this.
So how many, and you might have said this and I missed it, how many years has it been that you've been running?
Actively, not as part of boxing, around 5 to 6. Wow. I think 5 to 6 years. So
yeah. So
when I started, I had no guideline. I had no support. I had no one I could ask. So I researched and trial and error on my own. I'm here to give you that trial and error, so you guys don't have to go through what I had to go through to figure out this, because there wasn't really a resource or another runner I could ask. I was very intimidated. So,
all right, so that's what our goal is tonight, is to really not make running so intimidated. So if you are new to running, or if you can think back to, I'm kind of curious actually to hear the answer to this. When you think back to when you started running, whether that was yesterday, whether it was a month ago, whether it was 10 years ago, whether it was 20 years ago, think back to when you started running. Were you intimidated? If you were intimidated when you started running, put intimidated into the comment box. And I think I might add in intimidating myself, because I know I was. And I've kind of shared my running story on the introduction episode of the Healthy Runner podcast. If you haven't heard it, you can hear it there. But I was very intimidated. I was a gym runner and only did treadmill running for cardio within the gym, but never thought I could ever run a 5K, let alone a half marathon or a marathon. So I think I have a feeling a lot of people are going to feel that way. And I just want to give a shout out to some people who are jumping on here. A lot of Healthy Runner friends are popping on here. Brian, how are you? Good to see you. Jen, good to see you. Trisha's here. Dina's here. Deb's here. Marv is here. So a lot of friends are here. Eddie's here. So thank you guys for jumping on the live. And so Katrina, if someone was going to start today or tomorrow, right? Because it's nighttime. You're probably not going to start tonight and go out for a run at 9 or 10 p.m. You may, but
you might.
if someone's going to start tomorrow and they're like, you know what? I kind of signed up to this Healthy Runner group. I'm not a runner, but one of my friends was in it. So I figured, you know what? Maybe one day I want to be a runner. What does someone need? Like they absolutely need to actually start running in terms of equipment?
Okay, the only thing I would say you need is a good pair of sneakers. That will vary from person to person. And you had the podcast last week about the running sneakers, which I suggest if you're new, people might want to contact their local running company. That was, I believe,
Yep.
Woodbridge Running Company, but a local running store for your shoe. That's the one piece of equipment I would say highly, highly recommend. The other thing is sunscreen. You may think that's silly and overlooked, but sunscreen, put it on before you run, no matter if it's shady or not. You need sunscreen. I'm strongly opinionated about this because you don't want to get a sunburn. That makes running, I won't even get into the chafing stuff, but it makes it even more difficult when you have a sunburn. I'm telling you. So and also, I think I read an article where they said that skin cancer in runners has increased because there's so many people running and they don't think of putting sunscreen on in a morning run. You maybe take a 6 in the morning run, you're not thinking of sunscreen, but if you're out there, you will need it. So those are probably the two things I would highly recommend. All the other stuff, gadgets, phones, specialized clothing, that's cool, but it's not necessary to start running. So if you're on a limited budget and you think I can't get the high tech, every cell phone, you have a smartphone, you have your apps that you can download. You know, Map My Run is a free app. It tracks, there's a couple of them out there for Android. I know I won't recommend one specific one, but you don't need high tech stuff. If you want it, I mean, the high-tech stuff is kind of cool, but it's not necessary. So if you're just starting out, just think good pair of sneakers, comfortable clothes that you already have in your wardrobe, and sunscreen.
Yeah, no, those are great tips. And for those of you guys who did miss, if you're in the Healthy Runner Facebook group, you can certainly check out in our topics tab, Monday Night Spark. You will see all the previous Monday night live trainings that we do. But on the podcast, you can check out episode 14. So we did have Matt Santillo last week from Woodbridge Running Company. He shared a lot of great pointers for your running shoes. So I would definitely recommend you check out that episode if you haven't listened to it yet. And then I also want to give a shout out to Liz, who's here on the live. How you doing, Liz? Keisha's here. Brian says, I've been running for 35 years. So Brian, wow. Yeah, you got some miles under your legs there. That is awesome. And Jen's here. And so Brian's been intimidated before. He remembers those days. Jen's been intimidated. Jolie's been intimidated. And Eddie says, as far as races, I would feel like I don't belong at the race.
Mm-hmm. I still am intimidated. And I don't want to like go off on a side point, but no matter how many races I've done, and I've done marathons, half marathons, 10Ks, 5Ks, no matter how many, it is sometimes hard. You look at other runners and how fast they're going, and you're intimidated. You're like, how on earth can you do that? But so I don't think that ever changes. I think you always have levels of intimidation, maybe not intimidation, maybe more respect at this point. But I don't think that goes away completely for a lot of times, because in a race situation, I'll be honest, because you just see people who are so much faster than you and you're like, I can't keep up with them, but you learn you don't need to. It's not about competition. It isn't a race, but that's a whole nother story. Not when you're starting to run. I don't want to get ahead of myself. When you're starting to run, like I said, we'll go on to the goals.
Yep. So, okay. So you talked about the basic equipment we need is basically running sneakers, sunscreen. And yes, I can even vouch for that. Yesterday in Connecticut, it was extremely beautiful, gorgeous, 85 degrees. I think it was sunny. We did actually go to the beach, and it was actually nice because everyone kept their distance, was socially distant. And I forgot to put sunscreen on the tops of my ankles, and they were really hurting during my run today.
I'm telling you.
So, but yeah, no, you bring up a great point. And then the other thing that I always notice too is that we don't think of is scalp, especially if you have any hair product for the gentleman in your hair, because then your scalp's exposed, as well as using a hat, like I know you had mentioned before, Katrina. And then the tops of the ears, those will get you when you're running, and the back of your neck. So those are areas that you should definitely make sure that you're paying attention to applying your sunscreen on while you are running. So besides equipment, what do you think is the most important thing that someone needs to think about when starting to run?
In my opinion, it's to have a goal. And the goal will be very different for everybody. When people think of running, the goal doesn't have to be to run a race. It doesn't have to be to run fast. It can be your goal just to get out once or twice a week, go for a leisurely walk, run, jog, just get the fresh air. It can be to run a half mile without stopping. Doesn't matter about time, but to run a half mile. It could be to run your first 5K or to get a great thing, or it could be just to beat your brother or sister in a street race. Don't underestimate that. But once you pick your goal, then you can go toward it. And that will be different, obviously, for everybody else. A lot of times people will come up to me and they say, I should run. And I'm like, okay, why should you run? Why do you think you should run? What's your goal? If you have a goal in mind, no matter what it is, and like I said, it doesn't have to be a competitive goal. It can be, I emphasize heart healthy in my treadmill class. I never emphasize, weight loss or anything. Heart healthy, just walk. I have, and I hope she doesn't watch because she'll yell at me. I have a lady in her 70s who takes my treadmill class. And then I have Lou, a marathoner, in my treadmill class. And they both have different goals, yet they're both enjoying running. So my friend Kathy, who is in her 70s, she enjoys running for her health and her fitness. And she's obviously going to be doing it at a different pace than, say, Lou, who's in his 20s, who wants to qualify for Boston. And I think may have qualified. I'm not sure yet. But so it doesn't matter how old you are, what your goal is. Just have a goal, and then you can work toward it. And there's concrete steps. If your goal is to do a 5K, there's programs. If your goal, is to just run, then just run. Don't worry about time. Leave your watches, your smartphones, everything home, and just run for the fun of sake of running. And walk, run if you need to. And I could probably get into more specifics of that, because when I teach the Couch to 5K, I've had people who have never run in their life. And by the end of an 8-week program, they are running a 5K. You have to have the will and the determination, though. I can't run for you, or your coach or whoever can't run for you. If you want to do it, you actually just have to do it. But people can help you along the way, and that might be the most beneficial thing. You start my Couch to 5K, we start walking 2 minutes, a slow jog for 1 minute. 2 minutes walking, 1 minute jogging. And eventually we start getting up to more of running. We still walk, but the running becomes more than the walking. And then eventually we're into almost all running with just minimal walking. And that's how you do it for a 5K. But if you just want to go out and enjoy the great weather, then you can do it. And don't stress about how fast you're going, or I don't look like a runner, because that's a bunch of hooey. I've been in enough races where I can't tell who is a runner and who isn't unless they have a little bib on them with names and numbers. Because people, you look at a person, you can't tell if they're a runner or not by looking at them. So get that idea out of your head. Unless they're wearing a bib, you don't know if they're a runner. I truly feel that way. And I've learned that the hard way, but.
Yeah,
so.
no, I think you bring up so many misconceptions and things that I think we take for granted. And I think we've all been there before, right? Even if it's like Eddie, you've talked about being intimidated at the races. I've been there before at races. You're looking at who's next to you and you're like, ooh, should I be here? So if you don't mind, can I get personal with you? Is that okay? So I'm curious, do you remember what your goal was or your why when you started running 5 years ago?
Uh,
Is that
all right. Um,
this was unplanned, by the way, everyone. I'm putting her on the spot here.
it was to prove a point to somebody. It was okay. It wasn't to prove a point. It was to prove a point to myself, because I had been told by a couple of people, you know, you're never going to be a runner. You can't run. What are you thinking about running? That's dumb. That's bad for your knees. You're too heavy to run. And I was like, I thought about it and I said, well, I'm going to see if I can prove them wrong. And it initially started to prove them wrong. And I trained and I trained and I trained for my 5K and then a half marathon, and I proved them wrong. But somewhere along the way of proving them wrong, I found I like this, because I found like it was a light switch. I can't tell you when I decided I liked it, but I said when I was done, I'm enjoying this. This is something I can do for myself. No one can take this away from me. It's for me. I'm doing this now for me. And once I decided that, it didn't matter anymore. And I mean, I do have the best line I ever heard, and this was for a marathon, but I think it applies to anything. You know, a marathon, or we're going to use a marathon. A marathon is a journey of hundreds of miles. 26.2 is just the last mile. And that's really true. Whenever you start on anything, if it's just to get healthy, it's more about the process than the end result. You learn so much from the process. You learn so much about yourself just getting out there. You get up in the morning, you maybe don't want to get up at 6 in the morning. You're like, no, but you get out, you maybe run 15, 20 minutes, you come back, you're like, wow, I did that. I have the ability to do that. And I think that's where people, especially experienced runners, we train and train and train for a race. And then we live and die by that number on that race. But that's not what it should be about. If you think about the training, how we've developed ourselves and how much we've learned about ourselves, that's for a race. But even if you don't train for a race, or that's not your goal, just how much you learn. I have the willpower. I have the ability to get up at 6 in the morning or after work at 8 o'clock at night and run 10, 15 minutes. You feel a sense of accomplishment. So that's a short thing. Somebody told me I couldn't, so I decided to prove them wrong. And then along the way, I decided I really enjoyed proving them wrong, but I enjoyed the running for myself.
No, well, thank you for sharing that story. I know that wasn't planned at all, but I think so many people can resonate with your story. I know even I resonated with your story because I started running out of necessity after hip surgery, after having a torn labrum that was repaired. And it was something where my, surgeon said, do not run on the treadmill at all. And I needed to get back in shape. And he said, go run outside. And I didn't like it at first. And then it was to prove myself that I could get back in shape to where I was beforehand. And then during that time period, during those couple of months, getting through those first couple of months, it was kind of a challenge, like you said. And it was like, wow, can I do this? And, you get to that next mile, or, you run your longest, run ever, 4 miles, and that's 5 miles. And it's like, ooh, maybe I could do a race. And then you kind of test those waters, and then you fall in love with it along the way. So thank you for sharing your story. And Marva says that she did her first marathon. This is inspirational. I love this. At age 65 in Chicago. Yeah, that is amazing. So Marva is killing it. She actually did our Spark Fitness workout this morning. And then after the hour-and-a-half workout, she ran 3 miles after it. So she is doing phenomenal. I'm so proud of her. So Dina says that, oh my God, she loves your energy, Katrina. She loves your energy. Dina said that, Marva, you are amazing. So thank you guys if you're here on the live, just type in live into the comment box, or let us know any of your running related questions. Mm-hmm. So either things that you're wondering right now as you're starting out, or how can we as I'm going to put myself and Katrina in this category now as experienced runners. So we've been doing it a couple years at least. How can we help out some of our friends who are thinking about starting to run during COVID? So we do have a question here. So Jolie says that she has running friends that always seem to make it a competition. Like you can do better, be faster, do a half marathon, full marathon, etc. That's not my goal. How
Yep.
do you handle that and still keep your friendships? I've actually stopped running and hiding my runs because I didn't want that over my head. Ooh, I think this
I
is
no, I can understand that. I really can. I can understand that. Um, Again, that comes back to you start running for yourself, and you can still. I don't know if you've mentioned to your friends. I just want to run for myself. I enjoy running, but I'm not a competitive person, and that I had to repeat that to a couple of friends a couple of times. And friendship, that's one of those dynamic things, but you can maybe find somebody who just wants to run for the sake of running. And once you find that person running, if you want to pair up with somebody, you realize the other thing doesn't really matter. And it really doesn't. And if you're in Connecticut and around, I'll run with you. I'll run with anyone. Trust me. I don't care who you are. I don't care what pace I like. I don't care. I run with everyone. So you can look me up. If you're in Connecticut, I'll run with you. If you just want to go out there, don't hide. I'll get out there with you. I think socially distance. I'm not sure how we do work around that, but I'm creative. So yeah, that has happened to me. And I would say that's a very personal way you handle it, but just know that running should not be competitive. It should be for yourself and heart healthy. I'm a competitive person in a race. When I have friends who run with me who I've been training and they're like, I'm holding you back. I'm like, no, you're not holding me back. I want to run with you. You know, when I run on my own and in a race, I'm competitive. When I'm running with a group of friends or I'm helping people work, we'll walk, run. I enjoy that because, again, it's learning stuff about yourself. I love when I remember my Matra. She was in one of my first Couch to 5K programs. I remember her expression when we crossed that finish line for her first 5K. She hugged me. It was like the greatest feeling. And that's what, I want people to feel in accomplishment. So that is a very tricky question because that's an interpersonal thing with your own friends. But just know you're not alone in that. There's a lot of people, and that's where I wanted to mention experienced runners. Experienced runners tend to take a lot of stuff for granted. We assume everybody who runs wants to run a race. We assume everybody who runs wants to do an amazingly fast time and beat their time. That's not true. A lot of people just want to run for the fun of running. And I find a lot of people who have races planned and they've been canceled, they're freaking out. I'm like, but still run. It's still for the fun of running. So experienced runners, if you see somebody on the trail, nod to them. Wave, nod. You have no idea how big of a deal that is. But don't tell your friends who are just starting out, oh, you could do faster. Oh, you should do this. No, they'll do it when they're ready. And, don't always assume you have to run a race. You don't have to. That's my whole thing. You do not have to run a race if you start running. And that's the experienced runners I wanted to mention to them. You have no idea how much influence you could have and help a beginner runner. But I know it's always from a good place, maybe, oh, you can go faster. Oh, you can run this race, but that's not always what they're ready for and they don't want to. So just stick to your gut and don't stop running because your friends press you. Just do it at different times. Get creative. And hey, use a social distancing thing. I can't run with you today because we have to stay away. We have to socially distance. I'm going to run on my own. Use that. You have a perfect built-in excuse now to run on your own. Perfect. No one's going to question you. Say you're not comfortable running with them if you want because of the social distance. I don't know. Don't really.
No, I would agree with everything you said, Katrina. And then also, Jolie, like, I think, that was my goal of honestly starting this Facebook group, is to have this community of runners. And I think Katrina brings up a good point. And sometimes I'm probably guilty of this myself, that I forget, and maybe some of the things I say really relate or resonate to experienced runners, but I think may intimidate, and I don't do this at a fault, may intimidate beginner runners. And I know I can do a better job at that. But Jolie, we have a community here within the Healthy Runner community that, I want it to be supportive. And then also, you can also reach out to, if your friends aren't supportive of what your running goals are, reach out to, there are a lot of different running groups that are in the area as well. So there are running clubs, and I know these have been very beneficial for many people in here. There are so many running clubs. I feel like I can't shout them out because then I would be missing someone. But there are a lot of people in this Healthy Runner group that belong to different running clubs in Connecticut that have that supportive group. And we just ran for the Cheshire Half Marathon, a training program. And that was the first time I've ever done a training program like that, where, we kind of hosted it, and we had a group of 25 runners, and just seeing the camaraderie and the support of everyone in that group was like amazing. So there is something to be said about community, and, just surrounding yourself with people who have the same thoughts, beliefs that you do. And if your friends are too competitive, then like Katrina said, maybe you don't run with them, but you're friends with them and you catch up with them, you text, and maybe you go out for girls' night, but maybe you're not running with them, right? And you find some other running buddies that will be positive and kind of help motivate and lift you up versus making you feel like you've been putting down. So hopefully that makes sense. Thank you so much for your question. We do have a couple other questions here, Katrina. So Jen says, what's the best way to get physically ready to start running?
Okay. It's going to sound really simple. You are physically ready to start running. Just go out and walk, run. If you've never run before, I always say this is the instructor in me, you want to make sure you're medically cleared before you ever do this. If you have any kind of underlying health issues, please always check with your doctor before you actually start to do. And I know that sounds, it's always on the treadmills and all the equipment, please check with your doctor. But I do strongly feel you need to get, if there's something underlying. Otherwise, go out. And, I can even, if anybody afterwards, you can contact me, but you start walking like a 2 minutes, then running a little bit. But as for getting physically fit to run, that is a side effect of running. And it's kind of like this paradox, because people are afraid to start running because they think they're not in shape. I was one of them. But once you start running, your running shape improves. So you can be in any kind of shape and start running. You start walking and then jogging, walking and jogging. Also, having said that, and because I know Dr. Scott, we need to mention strengthening, stretching, follow all of your stuff before you go out and running, foam roll. That's a whole nother topic that he'll get into, I'm sure. But there really isn't any specific exercise. I will say, and I teach a core class, and I'm sure you agree with this. Any activity, whether it's biking, running, swimming, you want a strong core. And by core, I don't just mean your abs, because a six-pack is not realistic for me. Your core includes your abs, your lower back, your hamstrings, your glutes. You want a strong core. So if you have the ability to do any kind of core class or core strengthening program at the same time, I would suggest you do that while you start running, because a strong core will keep you mobile no matter what age, no matter what. But really there isn't, I mean, in my personal, and you could have a different opinion, but I don't really know of a specific program to get in shape to running, because you start at your pace and you run at a comfortable pace, walk when needed, and just start doing it. Really, you'll be amazed at what your body can do. You really will be shocked at what your body can do.
So I love what you said, Katrina, about training. You've kind of made that point twice without actually saying it, but it really resonated with me, because that's kind of the fifth principle of our Spark blueprint that we talk about all the time, is kind of training smart with proper progression. And you've kind of alluded to that twice now, is that you need to do it at a slow enough rate to allow your body to adapt and be able to take up running. And I love how you talked about your walk run intervals. I highly recommend that for all the injured runners I work with, kind of getting back into running, or if they're just starting out. So kind of, Jen, I would say, training smart with proper progression, as well as a lot of the exercises that we've talked about, those running specific muscles that we've talked about in previous trainings, as well as within our blueprint. But I can get you some of those previous blog articles as well, Jen. So before we do have a couple other questions, but Katrina, one that I was thinking about, because you shared, which was awesome, by the way, your reason for why you started running, or your why. So once we have our goal or our why on running, what is next? What do we need to do in order to run?
You need to just, like I had said before, you need to just start doing it. And you need to not compare yourself to others. You need to just find your goal and work toward that goal. It helps if you have somebody who can hold you accountable. And I don't mean somebody who'll harp on you. I mean somebody who'll support you, who's your own personal cheerleader. I'll be anyone's cheerleader, including myself, because if I learned at an early time, if I wasn't my own cheerleader, nobody was cheerleading for me. So you need to just do it. And I also have a saying in the gym, don't compare yourself to any other runner. Just do it. Because what is the biggest cause of injury in the gym? And I inevitably, when I ask that question, get a million different answers. It all comes down to one word: ego. Ego will cause you injury in the gym. You look at somebody lifting next to you. Oh, I can lift more than them. Well, you probably can't, and you're going to get injured. Oh, I can run longer, or I can run faster. Or I'm just going to go out and run. No, ego, it will cause a lot of injuries. So once you have your goal, whatever it is, work toward that goal. I know these sound really simple, but there's not really a lot of, I don't want to say rocket science in it, because I love rocket science, but I'm a science geek. You just have to do it. And if you can find a supportive friend, whether it's a spouse, whether it's a friend, your mom, your dad, one of the other runners, Carrie, in the half marathon group, she ran with her dad. She started running with her dad. You just find somebody who can be encouraging and helpful. Again, I'll be that person. If you don't have anyone, just call me up or DM me or text me, and I'll be like, oh, you can do it, I'll help you. But you just want to pick your goal. But you do need, I go back to, you do need to have a goal, because otherwise you probably will not do it if you don't have that goal. Even if it is just, which is a great thing, even if it is just to go outside for 2 days a week, like I said, that's great. That's a wonderful goal. It really is.
Yeah, no, that's great, Katrina. So we do have a question here from our girl, Crystal. Crystal, how are you? She says, how are you getting through this pandemic with races being canceled and keeping goals in mind, especially any running season seemingly gone?
Well,
staying motivated with your goals is basically the question.
That's the whole thing that I have kind of always said. I was in the Cheshire Half training program. I followed that to the letter, and then I did the half marathon on my own. And I am now continuing to run on my own because I have a goal of training for a marathon in the fall. And eventually the races will come back. But that's when I said the race, a marathon or even half marathon, is a journey of 100 miles. It's not the race itself for me so much. It's what I learn about the training and the discipline. And, you know, I find, honestly, I have to set up a training plan every week for myself. And if I set up a training plan on Monday saying, and it's on my board, Monday I'm teaching a class, Tuesday I'm running this many miles, Wednesday I'm running this many miles, Thursday I'm teaching. I set that up every week with a goal in mind. If I reach it, yay, I give myself a star. If I don't reach it, I don't get so upset because I'm not specifically training toward a race. I want to maintain a certain number of mileage for me so that when I start ramping up my mileage, it'll be healthy. But I find that by putting it on the board, on the refrigerator, on a whiteboard, I have a little Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I put down what I want to do that week. And then if it's on paper, I tend to do it. If I just say, oh, I'm going to run this week, something always comes up. But if I put it on the paper or on the board, that's how I keep myself motivated. And it is hard. Don't get me wrong. It is really hard sometimes. I'm like, I still am at work. I come home and I'm like, I don't need to run. I'm not in a training plan. Nope, I need to run. And I think Michael 2 weeks ago, was that his name, from Ohio?
Steve. Yes, Steve.
He said, this is accurate. Put your shoes on, walk out the front door. If you walk back, okay, but walk out the front door, take 2 steps out, start running. And that really is, I mean, it's really hard sometimes. Like when I wake up and I'm like, I don't want to run. I don't have a race in mind. But then I go back to, I learn about myself during the training. But don't get me wrong, it's not easy. But that race for me is not the be all and end all, because something horrible could go wrong on your race. I've been injured more times than not. And I finish, but my time sucks. Oh, sorry. I mean, I could train 16 weeks for a marathon and then I get injured halfway through the marathon and it's devastating. I mean, you're crying on the ground, devastating. But then I look back and say, okay, that 16 weeks, I learned stuff about myself. So that's where I come from and why and how I'm trying to keep my motivation. And, you know, but I do put it on the board every week and I have a specific goal. I know when my marathon is in the fall. I counted backwards. Now from that day, then I have to fill the gap and I want to make sure I keep my mileage up. But don't get me wrong, it's not easy. It's not easy when you don't, for me at least, when I don't have that goal. So make a goal. Make a goal to run. If I don't know how much you run normally, if you run 20 miles a week, make that your goal. Split down 5, 5, 5, 4, you know. And if you don't get to it, don't kill it. Don't get upset about it. If you do, great. But if you don't reach it, you don't have that, oh God, I have to run, I have to run, I have to run because it's on my marathon plan or my 5K plan. I don't know if that helps.
I'm going to answer for Crystal. And I'm going to say it does help because I've even resonated with what you had to say. So thank you for that. And I think just the accountability piece that you talk about, Katrina, is important. Just like Crystal, you know, you went 3 for 3 in the Spark Fitness program last week, you know, and you were proud of that and you were hitting those accountability goals. So do the same thing with your runs. And like Katrina said, don't beat yourself up if you don't do it, especially now. You know, our lives are turned upside down still. You know, you're homeschooling, we're working from home, and you know, you have to have realistic goals at the same time, but trying to, whether it's writing it down, like Katrina said, make a plan for yourself, kind of set out a plan ahead of time, I know has helped me also try to stay in tune with my goals. So I think Katrina shared a bunch of tips there, and Mel also agrees that it's the mindset piece. That is, you know, the mental aspect is what's hardest for her. And I just want to say, hey, Rochelle, how are you? Thanks for jumping on here. And, Yeah, I think it's really the process, and I think you shared a lot of good pointers there, Katrina. So I guess maybe if we can close before we recap is
Mhm.
you did mention some things about, so we talked about equipment, we'll kind of recap that, but what's the main thing you think you want new runners to take away from today?
That you can run no matter what, as long as you are physically able to, and I mean from a medical standpoint, you can do it. And I know it sounds cliche, but if I can do it, and my husband, my mom said, "You ran?" I mean, I was a very, very overweight individual. I don't talk about specifics, but I lost like over 100 pounds. I mean, I was not an active individual. I was a couch potato. And and it wasn't easy, but if I can do it, I think a lot of people can do it. And my goal is to get people to do it, no matter what your goal is, or to just be healthy. And, you know, just take that with you, that you can do it. Have confidence in yourself. You'll be amazed at what your body will be able to do. You really will. I mean, you just have to convince yourself to do it. Like I said, I can't run for you. I will, but I can't run for you. You have to make that decision to do it. And then just do it. I mean, it's a Nike commercial. I don't even, but there's something to be said for that. Just go do it. Don't worry about anybody else. Don't compare yourself to anybody else. And actually, with this social distancing, you have a great opportunity to start running on your own. And nobody's going to be watching you. Trust me. You can run on your own. No one's going to think you're weird or crazy for running by yourself. They'll actually applaud you. And nobody's watching you. If you're very self-conscious like I was when I start overweight or whatever, do it when no one's watching you. You have a great opportunity now because you're supposed to be socially distant. You don't have to run in a group. You can run by yourself. And when you get more comfortable and confident, then maybe you will be okay on the trail or on a road. But you just do it. Really, I know that sounds cliche, but that really is my best piece of advice. And know you can do it. Have the confidence. And if you can't, I'll tell you that. I will call you up and keep reminding you, you got this. You really do have this. If you want to do it. Again, if you really want to do it, you can do it. I promise you all.
Oh, I love it. She's bringing the fire tonight. There's sparks flying everywhere right now. And this is something
This
that
is
I
great.
feel passionate about as well, is that anyone can run. And it's kind of one of our family favorite movies. For those of you, you'll know this reference, Gusteau, that anyone can cook, from Ratatouille. If you
Yeah.
guys like that movie, we love that movie here in the Scotty household. But just like he says, anyone can cook. I really feel that anyone can run if they do it properly,
Yes.
and they properly build up and they're medically cleared, like Katrina was saying, and they train right with proper progression. And then we get into, with the Spark Blueprint, all of the specific exercises that you can train your body in order to run, right? So we know that's the whole philosophy here in the Healthy
Cross
Runner
train.
community. Cross training, very, very important. So some of the things that Katrina kind of shared with us, just kind of recapping for those of you who are just tuning in. At this point, we talked about what we need to start running in terms of equipment. Katrina shared with us what's the most important thing you need to get started. And really, she talked about your goal or your why and kind of delved into that. And then once you have that why, what you need after that. And it's basically, essentially, she talked about a support network, right? And having support and being surrounded by people who are going to support you in obtaining your goal and fulfilling your dream or your why. And then we gave some actionable tips on how to kind of stay motivated, stay on schedule, whether as a plan. So if you liked any of what Katrina had to say, please hit that like, hit the love button, throw some hearts. She's got passion. She's got energy. That's why I wanted to bring her on the show. She's been amazing. And those
And
of
I'm
you
going to go
who
crash after this.
and
Really.
those of you who did resonate with anything Katrina said, I know you have friends who are struggling right now during
Mhm.
coronavirus. I have friends. I've reached out, I've texted a bunch of people of late, and I know they're struggling from a health standpoint, from a mental standpoint. Maybe this can provide them some guidance, give them the little push, the little motivation. So tag them in this video if it's on Facebook, or once the podcast is released, it will be released on Thursday. I'm releasing all of the new podcast episodes on Thursday now. Share that podcast episode with them so they can hear this and hopefully provide that little bit of motivation they need in order to take up the sport, because we all know, most of us who have been doing it for a while, the physical and mental benefits that we get from running, and we want to share that with more people out there. So please share that with them, and it can help them during this difficult time of COVID. So thank you so much, Katrina. I really, really appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule, because I know you've been working like crazy as well. Those of you who jumped on the Facebook Live, thank you. Those that are listening on the podcast, we thank you. And those watching on the Spark Your Training YouTube channel, we thank you. Remember, every Monday night, we go live 8 p.m. to answer your running related questions. So keep us in mind in your schedule and on your calendar. So any parting words, Katrina?
Just run, or walk, run, or just walk, but just get out there. All kidding aside, all seriousness, get outside if you can, whether it is walking, whether it's hiking, whether it's running, whether it's a walk run, just get outside. The fresh air helps. And don't be intimidated. Don't be intimidated. You can do it. And like I said, I'll be anyone's personal cheerleader. And I honestly mean that. I'm not just saying that. I've been where every one of you have been, a beginner runner. I have been there. The thoughts that go through your head at night, when you're sleeping, or you're like, I'm not good enough. I'm not going to be able to do it. The doubts. I've had millions of those doubts. I still do every time. I mean, I'm always shocked when I run. I ran a number of miles and I went, wow, I just did that. No matter how many times I've done it, I'm like, wow, I just did it. So any thoughts that you're having or self-doubt, I understand. And, I've been there. So I will be anyone's personal cheerleader from a distance until the stupid COVID thing is gone. But, you'll see my name in this. It's Catrina Aniballi on Facebook. You can personal message me there. I have an email and I have an Instagram, hook off the jab, but that was my boxing days. That was my signature punch, the hook, the jab, hook. That was my signature move. So that's why I use that. And I have a lot of running stuff on my Instagram. I try to be very encouraging. I never post my times, because I will never post my times on an Instagram. And that's something a lot of experienced runners do. And they're like, I ran this. But I know when I first started out, I would see that and get discouraged. I would see somebody run 8 miles in like this quick time, and I would get so discouraged. So I make it a point never to mention how many miles or how fast I went, because it's irrelevant to everybody. It's only relevant to me. I don't need to put it out there, because that will discourage somebody who might just be starting out. So that's one of my own personal things. I will never, unless you ask. If you ask, I'll tell you. But there's no reason for you to know my time, because it's not going to help you. Don't compare yourself to anybody. Just do it for yourself. So if you DM me on Facebook, I'll give you the Instagram account. It's a public one, but anybody who wants to know anything or have any other questions you come up with after, feel free. Trust me, I will answer them.
Yeah. So as you can see, Katrina has such a giving heart, and we appreciate that and appreciate you taking your time today. And as you said, just do it. Just get out there, just run. And I will drop all of your information in the show notes of the podcast episode so people can reach out to you and contact you. So thank you again, Katrina. Thank you again for everyone listening. And just remember, stay active, stay healthy, and just keep running. Until next time, guys.